Welcome, welcome. This is Dr. Greg Case on Off the Couch with Dr. Greg, where psychology meets everyday life. Hey, I'm Dr. Greg, and I'm here with Brian Gomez. He joins the conversation. Producer Brian, say hi, Brian.
Happy Monday, you guys.
Oh, and also Tony, engineer. Tony, hi. Say hi, Tony.
Hello.
I may have you because we're going to touch on a few interesting topics as we go through. Today we're going to talk about, we left off with last week why people spread fake news and who falls for it and what to do about it. We kind of left off right in the middle, and it was such an important topic we decided just to cut it off and bring back the last part of it this week. And it is amazing to me how much crazy stuff is going on and how fake news really is taking hold in this world. So it's a very timely topic. We're also going to talk about this week in psychology, a couple of studies that just came up. Did the Supreme Court really screw women up? And the selfish secret to a happier relationship. You'll have to stay tuned for that. Psychology in the news. I asked the question, based on a news story, can teacher strikes actually improve your child's mental health? Stay tuned. But right now, you probably notice I'm in a different place. I am in Houston, Texas. This is where I got my PhD. I'm here to go to somebody's wedding, and I'm here staying with a friend in Houston. And it's just one of the rare, spectacular Houston days today. It is really fun. So, fun fact, guess what? Texas is slang in Norway for something. Can you guess what it is? You guys guess?
No, I was trying to think. I was like, wait, what would it be? But I have no idea.
It is slang in Norway for crazy, believe it or not.
Believable.
That is the actual truth, but it is not crazy the kind of we think of mental health issues. It's wild, crazy, out of control, like bonkers. They don't have an exact term, but it's something like that. They don't know exactly where the origin of the word comes from, but it's thought that, they say Texas because they're referring back to this kind of Wild West mentality. And they say when something like, something is just an out-of-control party that's going on, they say it's totally Texas, but they say it in Norwegian. They actually use the word Texas, though. So I thought that was kind of a fun fact. Just found it yesterday. But, I was looking on Snopes.com, which is a fact-checker news site, and I was doing it in preparation for this story that we're talking about today. And that's how I found that Texas fact. And it, in fact, was rated true. But we want to go back to why people share fake news. There was actually some research I shared on the last podcast, research from the Harvard Kennedy School, and it had some reasons why people shared fake news. One, they thought the item was funny, so they wanted to share it with their friends. They wanted to illustrate an item is false, like sending it around to their friends. Can you believe this? Can you believe they wrote this or did this? Others minimize the harm. They'd share fake news saying, well, who cares? Nobody will believe it anyway. Well, we'll find out that's not true. But I talked about a large chunk of people who do it intentionally. They do it for very nefarious or harmful reasons. They want to harm people, they want to harm society, or they want to mislead people to get them to do what they want. And that's sort of the scariest thing. And sort of maybe the most concerning group, I would have to say, is people who do it for what they think are good reasons, knowing they're sharing fake news, but they say it's for a good reason, like they think it'll persuade someone over to their side, which they believe is the right side, or to motivate people to take an action that they believe is the right action. Scary stuff, huh? But that's where we left off. And what's interesting, or some interesting things from this week, there's some new research from Northeastern University in Boston. They had 500 participants, and they split them up evenly between Democrats and Republicans and older and younger groups. And this was a study that was just published in Communications Psychology. And they found in looking at fake news, and they looked at these fake news headlines, and they asked how believable this headline was. So they looked at this group, older Republicans, younger Republicans, older Democrats, younger Democrats. They showed them all the same headlines and said, how believable is this headline? Well, Republicans and younger people were more likely to believe false headlines. Isn't that crazy? Republicans and younger people. Why do you guys think that might be?
I mean, the whole critical thinking, I would say, it's kind of gone out the window. They don't seem to, check their sources or really do anything deeper of a dive.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad thought about that. I think also maybe older people might have more experience. They might be more as maybe news literate, know how to look for sources more, but we're going to talk about that. I think what was interesting is the Democrats were less likely to fall for fake news, and I thought there might be some reasons for that. I was just talking to a friend about this study earlier today, and she was proposing that, it might be due to some very deep-seated cultural reasons within each group. And I thought that was interesting, but that needs to be followed up a bit more. Nonetheless, that's the finding that they found. They did find that a nearly equal ability of all groups to be aware that they could be wrong. And that's a good thing. So people, even though they might believe a headline, they kind of know, well, I could be wrong. This is a test after all. So I thought that was kind of cool.
And
let's talk about Republicans versus Democrats. I don't actually want to sit on political beliefs, but yet political beliefs seem to be very much at work in a really kind of fascinating way when it comes to fake news. Republicans exhibited, what we call a true bias. That's a tendency to evaluate items as true when the item is pro-Republican. So when they see a headline that says, Republicans saved the day, they're like, yes, absolutely, that's true. Republicans also had a false bias, which is a tendency to evaluate items to believe something is false when the headline is pro-Democrat. So if it said Democrats saved the day, they'd say that's definitely false. And that was kind of an interesting split to happen. It's a truly partisan split within Republicans. Democrats, though, were completely different. I thought this was the most interesting part of the study. Democrats demonstrated what's called a false bias for pro-Democrat headlines. They didn't believe good news that pertains to them. I mean, how self-flagellating. I mean, this is where we see this happen a lot. And this is so if they see a thing like Democrats say the day, they're like, oh, maybe not. And I think this is kind of interesting right now in the presidential season when you have a very strong economy and you have people who are, economists are calling this the Goldilocks scenario. So you have inflation going down, wages going up, and the economy is roaring. So the stock market's roaring, everything you judge the economy on is doing super well right now. Gas prices are down, and we could go on and on. But people might not believe it, especially Democrats thinking they might believe the false headlines, which is really fascinating. Democrats had little or no bias for pro-Republican headlines. So when they saw a pro-Republican headline, they really didn't think much of it. They evaluated it for what it was. They weren't swayed one way or the other. Interesting stuff, huh? But what do you think with older versus younger? It seems like older adults were better at discerning false news headlines. So it's interesting because older adults also share more misinformation. This is so fascinating to me because I'm a victim of this from my own family. I had a family member who I won't say, but is older, who continued daily to send me barrage of misinformation. And I would look it up and I would just go, this is crazy. It sounded like it could be real. And I would look it up and I would go to Snopes.com, which is my favorite news checker website. And so I would go and I would send it back to her and say, this is not true. Here's why. And I turned her on to this news site, which is good. but she still found items that she fell for because they would start with, this was checked on Snopes.com and it's absolutely true, even though it wasn't. So you can't just believe it because someone tells you. You have to go to the fact checker website. So what does all this mean? We talked about last week, which is what you believe to be common sense may actually just be your opinion and is not so common. And people might think that what they're seeing is common sense, but what they're doing is actually engaging in confirmation bias, which is filtering in information to confirm their own beliefs. So what's the solution? What do you think the solution is, guys?
I don't know, because I fall under that it should be common sense situation that I'm like trying so hard to think not that way and try to see it from somebody else's perspective. But yeah, how could I go about that?
That's good for you, though, for doing that.
I'm trying. Last time you mentioned that, I was like, okay, think about the whole judging somebody and like almost like a religious, system. Like I wouldn't want somebody to judge me if I'm not doing certain ways that they think are correct, So I've been trying to do it that way. But yeah, that's one that I would need help with because I have, a short patience for common sense.
Well, a solution might be to find your news from reputable sources, and that's be active in seeking your news. Remember, we did News Finds Me, like being passive about getting news sent to you, but to be more active, to actually go to certain things that are credible news sources. How do we judge a credible news source? So a credible news source is what we call sourced information. I'll talk about ones that all fit under that in a second, but that's where they don't just somebody doesn't just write a story. They have fact checkers fact check it, and they have other people confirm it so that they can report it. And when they do get something wrong, they then issue a retraction. They say, we got it wrong. Or let's say I think New York Times had a journalist who was making up stories that couldn't be fact checked. And they were like human interest stories about individuals' personal lives, and it turned out that person was just making them up, and that was a huge story, and they fell on their sword with that one, which was really great. So when they do make mistakes, they own up to it. They don't just pretend it's not there. So major newspapers are sourced material, things like New York Times, LA Times, etc. I believe in a major paper and a local paper. I like physical, but we talked about last week, it's so expensive because there's no algorithms in a physical paper, and you discover news as you look through it. TV, PBS, and BBC are good, neutral shows. Generally less biased TV news sources. Radio, National Public Radio, network news is generally good too. I know a lot of people don't like certain networks, but in general, network news is good. I would stay away from any news opinion shows, which sometimes is kind of hard to tell. But be skeptical of news when you see it on social media. And last week I said, when in doubt, check it out with the news. Like, go look for the real thing. But that was what I thought until I saw this study. How about that? I'm continually swayed by research. And here's another thing. There was a new study published in the journal Nature that shows the opposite occurs when you go and Google search a news item that you wonder if it's true or not. Because what it generally does is it can bring you up other real bad sources. Because there might be 10 false information news sites that just suddenly come up to confirm a false information story, because the real information news sites are not going to put them up. So it's really fascinating. So they did this study. This was New York University's Center for Social Media, and it had politics, and it found that the act of searching online to evaluate news increases belief in highly popular misinformation, and by notable amounts. It wasn't just a random thing. It was a really bad thing. They did 5 different experiments. I won't go into them. They used a service called NewsGuard, and that's a browser extension that rates news about how well it does. So they found that searching online led to a statistically significant belief in misinformation, whether shortly after the publication or even when people did it months later. So what's a girl to do? I mean, I don't even know what to do in this situation. So there was luckily another study. This is by Penn State College of Information Sciences and Technology, and this is published in the Harvard Kennedy School Misinformation Review. This is one of these publications that really devotes to academic resources about how to deal with misinformation. And they published this study in October, and it measured the consistency of legitimacy across 4 popular fact-checking platforms. Oh, I feel like that's a tongue twister. So they looked at 4 fact-checking platforms. They looked at Snopes, PolitiFact, Logically, and the Australian Associated Press Fact Check. And they found that when they looked at information on these, they all rated certain news stories. They were in agreement across the board. So it didn't matter which information news source you went to, they all were basically in agreement. So it seems like it's not when in doubt, check it out, but to check it out with a reliable fact checker website. So, wow. So I listed 5 fact checker websites on my YouTube page in the description. So if you want to go there and just click on the description, I have 5 fact checker websites and then I have also the links to all the research studies that we're talking about.
And I'm wondering, Dr. Greg, are people just getting lazy and not wanting to do like the research and the homework on these news?
Brian, it is so true. One thing I did today, so I did this kind of fun thing. It wasn't fun at all. I went back to University of Houston. That is where I did my PhD work, where I did primarily did my research, did my doctoral coursework, did all that. I go there and I went to the building and I went to the floor where we had our classes. I mean, it was a small department, there were only 10 students in the PhD year that I was in. So it's small. And I went there and it wasn't that I just felt the stress, the overwhelm, because everything was so hard, so much work, But one thing we had to do to find information, we had to go to the library. We had to look up stuff in, card files. We had to go on microfiche. We were continually ordering things to be sent to us. It was really hard, and you really did look at information as something precious. Now we just do a Google search, and I love it. Believe me, I'm not complaining. But it has a lot of downsides and problems, and this is definitely one.
Because it sounds like back then it was real research to where now we get assigned homework or things to do for school or anything like that, and it's a lot easier. Like you said, we have it all at the touch of our hands, where back then it was actual hours of labor of reading and going through things.
One day we'll talk about other studies that show that when you have to put effort into something, when you have to wait in a line that's significant, 20 to 30 minutes at least, you usually enjoy the result much more. When something comes too easily to you, you don't regard it as important or as special or as fun, all that.
Isn't that what it goes for everything in life?
Yeah, so we don't really, it's good that we have to work. And I think they addressed this in the second Matrix movie. I always thought that was really fascinating. I'm sure it went over most people's head. But he was saying they had to redesign the Matrix several times. They couldn't do it. They couldn't just give humans everything they wanted because they just kind of fell apart. So what they needed to do was to create a world that was difficult. So they had to overcome adversity continually, and then they could have the bodies work as batteries very well.
I need to
in
watch
case
the
you haven't
movie
seen
again.
it. I think it's the second one that has that particular. Maybe it's the third. I saw all three, and I forget. I know I saw the more recent one too. So I guess four. But okay, so how to reduce the spread of fake news? If you do come across news that you know is fake, what do you do with it? This study was fascinating too. So this is by the School of Social Sciences and the University of Westminster, London. And they found that you may feel the need to call out or argue with a piece of news, misinformation, but any engagement with it, like leaving a comment, saying this is BS, or liking it or disliking it, or sharing it with somebody, may increase the chances that that news item is shown to other people. How about that? So, what do you do? Well, it seems it seems that the very best thing to do is to delete it or report it to the host site. Why is that? Because when you increase fake news repetition, when it gets sent out more people are likely to believe it. We go through this repetition principle. When we see information, we're more likely to believe it, and we're more likely to share it. And when people start seeing information that they've seen before, that they're like, I thought that was fake, but gosh, I keep seeing this. It must be real. It's kind of this thought process that goes on, and they're more likely to share it, and they're more likely to rate it as accurate. So it's best that you just don't do anything, delete it, or report it to the host site. Like if you see a bad video on YouTube or, some kind of something, you can report it. And then move away from that spark that could cause another dumpster fire of misinformation. How about that?
Now that makes sense. And then if you also comment on something that you don't agree with or you agree with, then you get other people chiming in. And that can sometimes cause even more problems and more drama within, your own little life, that you were trying to just comment something here and there.
It's very true. Long ago, I made a policy for myself to only leave positive comments on the web because there just seemed to be so much negativity. So I really try to do that. And I do find myself not leaving things a lot because I'm like, usually I would say something like, this is not true, blah, 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 but I just go away from it. And luckily that was a good policy, but not for the reasons I thought. I was doing it for me to not be so negative. But it seems like it is a good thing to do for people.
Yeah, because you get a chain reaction sometimes. I try to avoid stuff like that too, just because I'm like, if somebody doesn't like what I post on the comment, then it becomes a whole issue within the comments,
Yes, absolutely.
So
yes, then you
better
can
to
get
just stay quiet.
So right now I'm in Texas, folks. Texas, where, and I just saw this last night on Saturday Night Live. This is so funny. I was just rewatching it, watching the most recent show, and they happen to say on their news show about the teen pregnancy rates in Texas increased for the first time in 15 years in 2022. So what do? I go and look for the study. So I'm like, I don't know. Is that true? If it's true, I want to actually say something about it because it's going to lead into what we'll talk about. So the year in 2022 was the year after the state implemented a 6-week abortion ban. And according to a report by the University of Houston's Institute for Research on Women, Gender, and Sexuality, we actually saw an increase in pregnancy rates in teens. The state's overall pregnancy rate for women also increased, and that's going from 15 to 44. And it was on the decline before this, and it rose for the first time since 2014, with the sharpest being among Hispanic women. But I think the most frightening statistic I saw was that pregnancies caused by rape and carried to term increased by 45% overall. Texas actually has the highest number, but the percentage covers all trigger law states. Isn't that wild?
That's scary, honestly.
So this came from a study, because I saw this study and I was like, wow, this is huge. And it basically said, how do things like this, like these trigger bans, affect women's mental health? And there's a new study from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and it was published in the journal JAMA. That's a journal of the American Medical Association, one of the absolute top journals. So this is an extremely, Johns Hopkins you're already a top university, JAMA, one of the top journals. So this went through a lot of scrutiny. So this can be relied upon pretty significantly. They found a statistically significant increase in self-reported anxiety and depression symptoms in women from states that banned abortion after the U.S. Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade in 2022. And then they found it in specifically those states. They call the states are called trigger law states. So they had laws on their books that when the Supreme Court ever did such a thing, whoever gave them the power to do so, this law would trigger into place, and Texas was one of them. Pretty wild. So why I thought this was so interesting, this was an ingenious study because they weren't studying this. They weren't going out and saying, how did the Supreme Court's decision affect you? This was done as part of the Household Pulse Survey. So this is the U.S. Census Bureau, does these these selected surveys. I'm actually sent one now and then I do one for business. It's just business stuff. I don't do any kind of personal information. But the Census Bureau sends it to me every now and then. They started the study back in 2020, just before the pandemic began. And they surveyed residents 18 and up in U.S. households, and they surveyed them every 2 weeks to provide snapshots of the household's health and socioeconomic conditions. And it included something called the Patient Health Questionnaire. So the Patient Health Questionnaire is a PHQ. I use it in my practice, believe it or not. It's a very short instrument that looks at depression, anxiety, and it just gives you an indication of someone's functioning. It's not diagnostic, but it just says it basically has someone's suffering increased. So the study researchers looked at females 18 to 45, that's childbearing years, and they looked at 153,100 responses, or not responses, but individuals who filled out these surveys on an ongoing basis. They looked at 153,108 women in trigger law states, and they looked at 102,581 in non-trigger law states. They found that they stopped at cutoff at 45 because that's the age researchers often use to compute lifetime abortion influence. So they're not just looking at is someone going to have a child, but could they get an abortion during this time? So they were kind of looking at this age range. And they didn't look at under 18. This was only people 18 and over. So the researchers looked at 3 intervals. They looked at December 29th, 2021, which was when the oral arguments were happening for the abortion. They looked at, for the abortion ban, the Dobbs decision. They looked at May 2nd, 2022, when the date of the draft of the Dobbs decision was leaked. Do you guys remember this? When it just suddenly was like the news media got a hold of this draft decision that no one even knew was real, but was going to take away abortion rights or would make it legal for states to do so. And so it became this huge furor that happened. And they looked at that date, they looked at the date of the oral arguments, and they looked at June 24th, 2022. That's the date the Supreme Court publicly announced the Dobbs decision. So they wanted to see what was the mood of women on these 3 days, according to this study. That's why I said this is ingenious. They were measuring it anyway. It wasn't because they were looking specifically at Dobbs. And then the study found that anxiety and depression scores increased 8.5% for all ages in trigger states in the 6 months after the opinion. So it didn't just go up immediately, it went up and stayed up in this group. And non-trigger states increased 5.4% after the opinion. So although trigger law states, because it affected them personally, went up higher, it's interesting to note that even in non-trigger law states, there was an increase in depression and anxiety. Fascinating, isn't it? And just so, because you're probably wondering, what are these trigger law states? Where are they? Is mine one? Well, here are the 13 states that had trigger laws in place that really are affected in the study: Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Wyoming, and of course, where I am right now, Texas. So the question, did the Supreme Court damage women's mental health? I don't think they did so directly. They didn't try to do so. But this is when we look at the consequences of actions that can change the environment, that can actually change the world in which we live, that will affect our mental health. So the Supreme Court may not have directly done something to these women, but they actually did something that had a profoundly negative effect on their mental health. Fascinating. And when we talk about environmental psychology, this is one thing. When we look at political opinions, when we look at judicial opinions, when we look at any kind of thing that affects how we live our life, that can change our mood and our functioning and our way of looking at ourselves, our way of being in the world, and our happiness. So we can't just put it on just what goes on inside. We have to also look on the world we live in and what goes on outside. Okay, well, if that isn't too depressing, we'll go on. There's a selfish secret to a happier relationship. I'll bet you never thought that, because we all think relationships are done best by always considering the other person. What do you think that selfish secret is? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I was trying to think about it when you mentioned it. I was like, what could it be? I mean, the only thing I could think of is like just staying true to yourself and like keeping your core character, because I feel like when people get in relationships, they tend to lose themselves and kind of mesh with the other person a little too much. And I think it's kind of healthy to still be the person you were before that person, just kind of grow together in a sense.
You know, that's not. What do you think, Tony?
Tony stepped out for just a second.
What?
Tony stepped out for just a second.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so yeah, you know, I don't think you're far off. Brian. It really is something a little bit. I don't think not in that same neighborhood, but not maybe so individually focused, even though it is individually focused. So they looked at 209 heterosexual couples. They surveyed 209 heterosexual couples. They showed that being more forgiving of your own shortcomings in a romantic relationship can lead to a happier relationship and a happier partner.
Oh, that's so nice. That is so sweet.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, but I mean, I would have never thought about that.
What's so weird is this is so in line with things I've been teaching my clients. And sometimes I wasn't exactly, I'm not going to say I was operating outside of research, there's a lot of indications this was going to be true. But I'm so glad to see a study that actually did this kind of thing. Did I say this was done by the Otto Friedrich University, Bamberg, and Martin Luther University, Halle-Wittenberg? This is in Germany. I did my best German accent there.
That was amazing.
So they looked at what self-compassion was. So we look at what self-compassion is, just in case anyone is kind of going, what the hell is that? Like, it's being nice to yourself, essentially. But let's go through the definition. And self-compassion is the act of having a caring, kind, and attentive attitude towards yourself, especially with regard to your own shortcomings. Researchers found that one's ability to react compassionately to your own inadequacies, your own suffering, and pain in the relationship benefits both members of the couple.
It's funny you bring that up because at the gym, I made another lady friend, and she was telling me how her son is so depressed all the time because he's short, and it's an issue with him dating, and he's really self-conscious with anything, trying to like talk to girls or anything, because the fact that he's short, although he's good looking, the fact that he's short is like killing him in that sense. And I mean, it's that shortcoming, that he is going to appreciate, but later, I feel like we get to a point in life where we start actually liking ourselves. I don't know. I mean, for me, it took a while to fully just be like, yeah, this is you. We just got to accept it and love it and keep it moving.
Well, when people like themselves, they're much more attractive. So that we can really lean on. But isn't it nice to know that when you're kind to yourself, when you're compassionate towards yourself, that your partner becomes happier? So if he stops beating himself up about being, vertically challenged, I guess they say, then he's going to probably also have a happier partner as well. And I think that we can also be compassionate toward others. I hear people talk negatively about people who are short or shorter or shorter than you or I guess. Let me who knows. But because everything's relative. But and I always feel bad about that because I did nothing to get the height I did. I drank milk, maybe. I don't know. I think it's just genes. It was just flatly genes. So that's all rather nice. But, even at the wedding I attended 2 nights ago, there was a discussion because the family of the woman, they're all on the more vertically challenged side, and the groom is quite tall. And the father of the bride actually said that, and he's like, "This is going to bring some vertical advantage to the family."
Oh, I love that.
Which is lovely. And I don't think he could have done that unless he was compassionate toward himself about his own self. But it is an issue in our society, that particular one. So that's a good reason to have compassion toward him as well.
No, yeah. And I mean, I don't think we think about that enough, that even the thought of being nice to yourself is just like, oh, how nice. And it's like, it shouldn't be that reaction, Well,
in fact, being nice to yourself may be the healthiest thing you can do for your relationship. I love this tip. So it not only improves your own happiness, but your partner's. And it seems that men in heterosexual relationships in particular showed a high level of relationship satisfaction if their partner was self-compassionate within the relationship. Isn't that amazing? So men are going to be much happier in their relationships if the woman they are with, these are heterosexual men, if the woman they are with is self-compassionate with herself and forgives her own shortcomings and forgives her own, problems or issues, doesn't put herself down, and in fact gives herself a little pat on the back and says it's okay. I thought that it's just beautiful.
That's a cool tip.
So self-compassion, a lot of people have trouble with it, and I have clients who will just they'll downright argue with me. They don't like it, they don't like the concept, they don't think it's a good thing. They're taught to believe that they're mean to themselves, it's going to work better. If they're mean to themselves, they will lose more weight or look better or function better, etc. But that just isn't true. In fact, my favorite study is about a weight loss study, and it found that women who were self-compassionate kept the weight off longer than women who
oh my God.
did not. They were just taught the same, diet and exercise, but weren't taught those techniques. So I thought, and it was really around acceptance for that particular study. So we can talk about that sometime. But what would a good way to do self-compassion, which is what would I say to a friend who's experiencing this issue? Or would I behave the same with a friend who's experiencing this issue?
For me, I go to pretend it's my little self, like I wouldn't be mean like that to my younger self.
Kid.
Yeah. That would be really mean if I was to say those words or thoughts to that kid that I'm like, no,
Good. Well, good. So we just have a few more minutes, so I want to skip to psychology in the news. And I asked the provocative question, can teacher strikes actually improve your child's mental health? And it all started with a photo. Is Tony in the room?
No, he's not.
Oh, well, it all started with a photo. When he comes back, Brian, let me know, and we'll put it up for people that might be on the YouTube video.
I'll put it up later.
Yeah, we'll put it up. We'll stick it in later in the video. The Los Angeles Times had a photo of a teacher who was striking, and it just says, crazy workload in handwritten, crazy workload equals stress teachers.
The picture is up right now.
Perfect. Crazy workload equals stress teachers equals mental health issues. And that just really cued me up. I'm like, that is intuitively correct. But as we talked about with common sense, I need to see a study. Lo and behold, I found one immediately, or I found something, not quite a study, but close. Also, in the background, the person saying, faculty working conditions are student learning conditions. And I think this is starts to be holed up. It made me think that there's this upcoming research, and this was done by Leanne Rollins Williams, who's producing this research right now. She's writing it up. It just hasn't been published yet. It's from the University of North Dakota. And this was an article she wrote in The Conversation, which is an online blog that kind of goes over a lot of research-based items. And they have researchers write about their work in the Conversation. And she did this research. She wrote about her work. And it identifies 4 benefits of prioritizing teacher mental health that create a more stable and effective educational environment. But before benefits, reduces turnout, reduces burnout and turnover. That's especially true in young teachers and who live in a workaholic culture. And all teachers have to manage heavy workloads and have high expectations. We always think teachers have it so easy. In fact, I do not envy them. Their work is incredibly hard. Also, for mental health improvement, it improves teacher effectiveness. And it seems that teachers who are more effective, who are more mentally healthy, can calm and be more solution-oriented when they're facing challenging situations. Also, it preserves institutional knowledge. We never give this credit. This is the collective understanding of how a school and its students work best. So the teachers that have been there a long time know the drill. They know how things work, so they are able to hold on to it. That's why employees that have been around a while are often gold mines of information. They can really tell you how to do things. And it fosters positive organizational structure. It creates an environment where teachers feel acknowledged, understood, and supported. So let's stop just blaming the pandemic, too. And this made me think, because there's the other study that came out this week about, because we're always saying, oh, the pandemic is what made mental health so bad for teachers and students. Well, I don't know about teachers. I think their job was already hard before the pandemic, and then it just got harder. But with kids, we keep blaming the pandemic, and what this study shows, this is by Cardiff University in the UK, said that, and it was published in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry. It's a publication of the Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health. They found that emotional problems in young people were rising rapidly, even before the pandemic. How about that? There was a steep rise. There was already 23% when they first started measuring in 2013, and it rose to 38% in the time period that was studied. And so 38% of kids 11 to 16 in Wales were found, and this is Wales in England, so, it's or a UK, it's found that, this is a different country, but they're still very similar. And I doubt that the kids in Wales are any different than Americans or other countries where we're touching with this study. They also found that girls and those from poorer families experienced the steepest increases in emotional problems. So if you're poor or you're a girl, you're going to have the steepest increases. So rich boys, you're good. Being rich seemed to provide better housing, adequate food, better health care, and less stressors in general. They did find issues with bullying. That increased, mental health issues and slightly, and quality of friendships decreased them slightly. But it was, we really don't know all the answers, but it does look like there was a lot that was going on before the pandemic even started. Pretty scary, huh? But do children grow out of it? This was a study in Columbia University and was published in JAMA Psychiatry. Again, one of the top journals. This is JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, just psychiatry studies. It showed positive relationships with parents and other adults, such as teachers, during childhood are associated with better mental health in adulthood. This is regardless of exposure to adverse childhood experiences. This is a trip. So Yeah, all you need is one positive, committed adult, and that can be a teacher. That can be, if it's because often it isn't a parent. There may be parents might be more adversarial toward their kids, or they're just stressed. They're working three jobs, or, they're just not able to give everything. And teachers can really make a big difference in someone's life. If you have one positive, committed person, that can really help. Those, the ones who are less likely to experience depression, anxiety, and stress in later life if they've had that person with them. How about that? That was pretty fascinating, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's true, though. I mean, after school, I would go to an after-school program, and I'll still remember her name was Shari. She was like the head organizer of the rec club in San Diego, and she was such a positive influence for me as a kid growing up because my mom had to work all the time, and I mean, that's why I was in the after-school program, so I wouldn't be home alone, and it was such a cool impact. I'll never forget that part of my life. So.
That's so beautiful. And this is, I think what's really cool is this is even in the face of these adverse childhood experiences. And this isn't like, oh, so-and-so won't, pick me for their sports team. This is physical and emotional abuse, neglect, caregiver mental illness, caregiver death, caregiver incarceration, and household violence. These are the biggies. And just having one supportive adult can help them to go into adulthood much more well-adjusted. This was beautiful to me. There is one kind of interesting thing, which is family religiosity. We often, our common sense is to think that this is thought to be more protective, that religious families are better, but it was actually associated with more, not less, stress among young adults with high ACEs, or high adverse childhood experiences. So when you're raised in a religious household, you might, if you had an adverse childhood experience, you might experience more stress in adulthood. And this is thought to be because there's more shame and guilt about these types of things. How about that? So what does all this mean for the striking teachers? So teachers, if the teachers go on strike, it may be uncomfortable. I had this happen when I was in school. Our teachers went on strike when we were in high school, and it was quite an adjustment when that happened, and it went on for quite a while, but things worked out and they got back. But so teachers the bottom line is once the teachers can get, they can live with an adequate wage, adequate pay, have better working conditions, that they'll suffer less mental illness and less stress and be there for our children. And when they're there for our children can have better relationships with our children, and our children can become better adults. So I thought all this was kind of cool. Also, teachers can't do this alone, parents. Parents can do and should do their part. Let's fight for, not against, teachers. That includes librarians, coaches, school personnel who are with our children all day long. Parents can get off their own distractions like social media and focus on their children and the quality of their relationship with their children, that really means something. And they can also help their children to focus on in-person live experiences to build healthier and more lasting relationship both within the family and with their friends. How about that? So I think that brings us all to the end today. Did we learn anything today? What do you think, Brian?
I think we learned a lot. We went over a lot.
We went over quite a bit. And thank you, Tony, for being there for us. This is Dr. Greg Cason, Brian and Tony bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.